You know, have you ever wondered why sheer willpower almost never works against our absolute deepest, most stubborn habits? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a genuinely fascinating theological framework on spiritual discipline, and it's all based on a teaching by Evangelist Ruha titled Open Doors. Now, whether you're already super deep into theology or just really interested in the psychology of human habits, this framework gives us a highly structured way to look at how external influences silently shape our internal lives. We're going to impartially map out exactly how this teaching defines the hidden mechanics of temptation, how it actually takes root in our day-to-day routines, and the specific daily practices it proposes to stop it right in its tracks. So let's just dive straight into a completely universal human frustration. Why do we struggle with the exact same temptations over and over again? It's a cycle that exhausts literally everyone at some point. And, a lot of people just assume this recurring struggle is a straightforward lack of willpower, right? Like a lack of dedication or maybe a lack of prayer. But this framework argues the root issue is actually something entirely different. It's about undetected vulnerabilities. It suggests the core problem isn't necessarily a failure of strength at all, but rather the presence of what the text calls open doors in a person's life.
Now, the entire core of this teaching really hinges on this vivid metaphor of the open door. In this context, an open door is defined as anything, and I mean anything, that gives negative influences an opportunity to shape our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. It's a pretty profound shift in perspective when you think about it. The big insight here is that negative habits and temptations rarely try to break down our heavily fortified walls by brute force. Instead, they just casually walk through doors that we've absent-mindedly left wide open. It's this subtle, almost invisible bypass of our spiritual and mental security systems, which honestly makes it all the more dangerous precisely because it feels so incredibly ordinary.
So, how do these doors actually get unlocked in the first place? Well, it is rarely through dramatic, sweeping moral failures. It's actually found in the mundane. These spiritual doors are pushed open through completely passive media consumption. We're talking about the shows constantly playing in the background while you cook, the music you're casually absorbing on a run, that seemingly harmless internet scrolling, and those wandering thoughts we just let linger during a long commute. It's the steady hum of background noise in our daily lives that acts as the key, quietly unlocking access to our deepest emotional and psychological states, usually without us even realizing it's happening. To really anchor this framework, the teaching points straight to a specific mandate from Ephesians chapter 5. Be careful how you live. Now, in this context, how you live isn't just talking about those massive, life-altering choices you make, say, once a decade. It translates directly to a need for absolute hyper-vigilance over your daily, minute-by-minute inputs. It is a stark reminder that casual consumption has compounding consequences. Being careful means recognizing that every single thing you allow your eyes to see and your ears to hear is either actively fortifying your defenses or it's quietly turning the lock on a brand new open door. Try thinking of your brain as this massive, constantly organizing storage room. This is the underlying psychological mechanism at play here. Everything you see and hear is meticulously filed away. The teaching heavily emphasizes that what enters our minds doesn't just magically vanish the second we look away or turn off our screens. Nope. Our minds hold on to those images, those words, and those experiences. And, as I'm sure we can all relate, these stored files almost always seem to resurface exactly when we don't want them to. They pop up as intrusive thoughts or uninvited imaginations during those quiet, vulnerable moments, like when you're just sitting in silence, or literally the second your head hits the pillow to sleep. And those resurfacing thoughts, they're actually the first step in what we could call the anatomy of a sin. The text maps out a very specific three-step progression here. First, a thought is merely entertained. Notice, it doesn't start as an action, it begins as a lingering, seemingly harmless idea floating around in that mental storage room. Second, if left unchecked, that thought takes root and it grows into a craving or a desire. Finally, that desire manifests into an actual action or sin. This is a massively crucial takeaway. Temptation is not spontaneous. It is a gradual, quiet progression that starts completely invisibly in the mind long before it ever becomes a visible action. Which brings up a pretty major point of tension, right? Because if we know this progression exists, why not just quickly filter out the bad thoughts before they have a chance to become desires? Well, the framework points to a heavy scriptural warning in Jeremiah 17:9. The human heart is deceitful. Basically, this means our internal security system is fundamentally flawed. We are terrible, heavily biased judges of what is harmless and what is actually harmful. Our own hearts and minds can so easily trick us, rationalizing that certain media or lingering thoughts are totally fine, effectively tricking us into leaving those dangerous doors wide open. So, the crucial takeaway here is that we literally cannot simply trust our own thoughts and feelings. Relying solely on our internal emotional gauge to decide if a certain TV show is harmless or if a lingering daydream is just blowing off steam is presented as a seriously dangerous trap. Because our internal filters are deceitful, what feels perfectly fine, or maybe even comforting in the moment, might actually be laying the exact groundwork for that three-step progression toward temptation. Our feelings are compromised, which makes them a highly unreliable metric for our own spiritual and mental safety. Okay, so if our own internal filters are broken and totally unreliable, what exactly is the remedy? Well, the framework proposes what you might call a divine audit of our internal storage rooms. Referencing Psalm 139, the practice involves actively asking God to search your heart and reveal anything that displeases Him. So instead of trusting your own flawed, easily manipulated feelings to try and locate the hidden threats, you rely on an external, divine assessment. It's all about inviting an objective, perfect standard to show you exactly which doors have been left open, bypassing the deceitfulness of human rationalization entirely. And once those vulnerabilities are exposed by that divine audit, the ultimate preventative step is found in Romans 12:2, which teaches the practice of renewing the mind daily. And honestly, that word daily is absolutely vital to this entire concept. This isn't just some one-time mental cleanse or an annual weekend retreat, because your mind is being bombarded with thousands of new inputs, words, and images every single day. Sweeping out that mental storage room and resetting your spiritual defenses has to be a highly active daily routine. Yesterday's renewal simply cannot protect you from today's open doors. So how do you practically achieve that daily renewal? Well, you can't just evict unwanted thoughts and leave the mind empty. Nature abhors a vacuum, right? An empty mind is just sitting there waiting to be filled by the very next passing influence. You have to actively fill it. By deliberately filling your mental space with prayer, scripture, and positive godly inputs, you effectively slam the door on negative influences. You are replacing passive, vulnerable consumption with intentional, protective armor. It is a proactive strategy of crowding out the dark by intentionally flooding the room with light. This ultimately brings the entire teaching into a stark, binary focus. Every single day, you face a profound choice. You're either passively leaving doors open to negative influence through unmonitored, careless consumption, or you're actively guarding your mind and walking in intentional discipline through daily renewal. In this theological framework, there is absolutely zero neutral ground. There is no coasting. Your daily habits, your media choices, and your thought patterns are constantly, inevitably pushing you toward one side of this reality or the exact opposite. We're going to wrap up this explainer with a final, rather provocative audit for you to consider right now. What enters your mind today is actively influencing your life tomorrow. So, based on absolutely everything we've just unpacked regarding the anatomy of temptation, what exactly are you allowing into your mental storage room right this minute? What mundane, everyday doors might you be quietly leaving unlocked? Take a moment to truly evaluate your daily inputs, because according to this teaching, the fleeting thoughts you casually entertain today are busy writing the permanent reality of your tomorrow.